Hey y'all, I'm here to interrupt your regularly scheduled Blackxecutive programming for a very special shout out for someone who has left a review. Shout out to Cupcake No Frosting who left a review saying, I listened to episode 6 and it was so inspirational and I love the guests. I have not been informed on Black creators with disabilities, so this was refreshing as well as informative. I loved it. So that is actually referring to episode 6 from Girls Chronically Rock. If you haven't heard that episode, make sure you go back and listen after you hear our current episode. If you want to have your review read, I will now make this a regular part of the show. When I get reviews, I will shout you out and we will carry that practice over into season 2. Make sure you leave your girl a review.
I made an executive decision in my mind to pursue things that my family did not pursue because I wanted to, add that value back to my family. So I'm like, well, nobody's going to, we keep flipping the channel. We keep going past this one channel where this stuff is running across the screen at the bottom. Nobody stops and look at that channel, CNBC. And I'm like, what is this? I literally, one day I remember sitting in the house, I went to the channel and I sat there and I'm like, what in the hell is this going on? I didn't know nothing about stocks. I made myself learn. And as I started to get more educated and aware about it, I literally just started opening up myself to more, influencers and leaders.
Welcome to Blackxecutive Podcast, where we share inspiration and actionable advice for Black creatives going pro. I'm your host, Jazz. With each episode, we'll chat with Black creatives thriving in entrepreneurship, corporate careers, and the nonprofit sector, all while building a network of Black creatives, 6 head nods apart. Enjoy the show, where the dreamers become doers and the aspiring become inspired. Let's get started. What's up, Blackxecutive fam? I'm your host, Jazz, and today we're chatting with Antwon Davis. Antwon is a serial entrepreneur and managing partner at Fourth Park, 4th and Ave, Spendify, and Cloudberry. Welcome to the show, Antwon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to come on the show and chat with me today. I think that you are going to really bring a unique perspective to the show that we really haven't had yet, because not only are you a creative, but you are also in a lot of the business side, which a lot of times we don't have that perspective. And so you're just in businesses and other sectors outside of solely focusing on your creative work. So can you talk to us a little bit about you being a serial entrepreneur and your journey into that?
Yeah, so I am originally from Albany, Georgia. So I was born here in the state of Georgia, and I've always had, like you said, like a creative knack, whether it was making music, dancing. I lived sort of like the ATL movie lifestyle where I was at the skating rink. Yeah, every Saturday I had a team of guys. We battled people at the skating rink every Saturday. So did a lot creatively. Graduated high school as most talented in my senior year. So
Wow.
I actually thought I was going to go to college and pursue like sound engineering and music, but I made a major pivot once I got up here at Georgia State and ended up pursuing marketing. And I fell in love with marketing. And on that journey was where I sort of started my first internet business at the time, which was basically a digital design firm, doing it out of my college dorm, juggling classes, exams, a girlfriend, and clients all at one time. And so that started the whole process of like studying business, learning business, first serving clients. I learned a lot about different industries by the clients that we had a chance to service. And over time, I grew Fourth Park out to a team of like designers, project manager, developers. And we still service clients today. And on that journey was where some of the other businesses that I have now were started. Cloudberry is more like a web services company. We offer web hosting, domain names, like the same kind of suite of services you get with any kind of web provider. We offer those services too. And that was mainly because I had a ton of clients who were asking me like, where should I buy my domain? And I kept sending them somewhere else. And I was like, well, why not? I just build the infrastructure and we just manage our own clients. And so we've been doing that now for a couple of years. And that's been good because that's passive income. Because once people's hosting gets set up and the domain names, everything is set up, usually people don't have a lot of issues technically with their sites. And then along the way from there, I started this tech company, Spendify, with a former business partner of mine. This was back in 2015, and we ended up kind of connecting on this whole idea of wanting to reconnect the consumer to the many Black businesses in their city. And at the time, there was really no central hub or tool or site that people use. Like, there was no website people went to find Black businesses, and there was no way online where you could really search for Black businesses, because even like Google doesn't index by ethnicity, so you can't really search by race, even in Google. So we built Spendify, launched it, got a lot of momentum, ended up getting on CNN, and we got covered in various magazines and different blogs, and that was for the first time for me. I got like a little bit of attention or fame or whatever. Not that that's actually
Yeah.
something I pursue, but I saw immediately how like you could take an idea, develop it, and launch it, and when it really starts to serve a need, like people do pay attention. So that journey led into my fourth business that I started about 2.5 years ago, going on 3 years ago, which is Fourth and Ave. It's a real estate company. We're a real estate solutions company and investment group, and we invest in properties, basically converting them into co-living spaces. So our whole focus with that is just how do we take spaces and turn them into shared spaces where people can co-live and work together and whatnot. So we focus on college students and sort of like corporate housing for traveling nurses and professionals. So that's sort of where I'm at now, but I'm managing all of the above. And the undertone of all of that is knowing that as a Black man in society, it's important for me to not just talk this talk, but walk it. And I know ownership is key. I
Yes.
know that assets are important. I understand the importance of wealth, the lack of Black wealth due to our oppressor over the years. I've kind of taken it as an honor to use my privilege in this country to run as fast as I can, learn as much as I can, build as many things as I can, and create jobs and opportunity and teach as many people as I can. Like, I want to be sort of like a Peter Pan, if you will, in business
Yeah.
over time. So, yeah.
Okay, you just like said so many keywords. I was trying to jot them down as you went on. So one thing that stood out to me is that you said when you were able to fill a need and you kind of saw how that took off. Can you talk a bit about need finding in business? Because you have several, so clearly you know a bit about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had this same conversation with somebody about a week ago in terms of like how a lot of people start businesses backwards based on like personal interests and passions versus really identifying where's the need in the marketplace and testing that need and providing value. So for me, it was I started designing. This was in college. I started designing because the church that I was a part of, it was a mega church, and they didn't have any design team for the college ministry. So I was a student leader at the college ministry while I was at Georgia State, and we were doing a lot of events and doing things on campus and off campus, but there was no like person or team that was creating any visuals or graphics. So I basically just figured out how to design, started offering my service to the church, and they became my first official like paying client. And that was when sort of like my whole design started to take off, and I got all these other churches, and it is what it is today. But from that thing, moving forward, even to the building a web services company, just having so many of my clients saying, "Hey, I need this, this, and this. Where do I go and get it?" So I think just putting your ear out, like if there's a certain area of interest where your skill sets and passion and talents align, that's beautiful. But it's important that the marketplace validates it by needing it, supply and demand. And
Yes.
I think sometimes we build bigger than we've even like assessed the market. I have many clients that come to us with Fourth Park needing, they want websites and branding and all this stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, have you even validated this yet? Have you even just gone out and just asked people, do they need this? Have you even tried to get customers to just see if there's a need for it, and build off of that demand that you can build over time versus spending a whole lot of money up front because you're passionate only to find out in the back end nobody wants the product or nobody wants the service.
Yes.
So I think it's just like, that's another area of just business acumen that we didn't get, I didn't get. It was just trial and error of learning like, okay, it's not just pursuing my passion only. I got to understand what the marketplace is asking for and figure out how to meet that need and connect that dot. That's
That is so good. Like, I love that because so many people are just like you said, they're driven by just their passion for wanting to do something and they never assess the market. And I think that's an advantage at like us being marketing people. We have that, but you know, a lot of people that are literally, they're just creatives at heart and they don't have any marketing knowledge. They just want to hop out there and do it. So another interesting thing you said was use my privilege. Now, that's something you often don't hear coming out of the mouths of Black folks. You know, it's usually like white privilege. And I know Charlemagne, the God, kind of challenged that with his book, Black Privilege. So can you talk a little bit about your privilege as a Black man?
Yeah, so I was very much so aware when I was going to college. Like, I would even say these kind of things to myself, like, man, I'm sitting in this dorm room. You know how many people wish, you know, you start to look at the statistics of just the amount of poverty and lack of access and resources and the lack of economic structure for a lot of countries. People don't even have the platform or foundation in their nation or city to even pursue things like that because the infrastructure is jacked up. So to have the ability to go off to college or to create something, to have that free will to do that, I definitely understood that as an American privilege. Like, first of all, being over here, there's a privilege that I have access to step out and do certain things. And I took advantage of that. And I think, too, leaning in a little bit with Charlemagne, you know, I haven't read his book yet, but I have heard him kind of talk about it. But even in terms of like having Black privilege, that there's certain industries where we're not represented and there are customers there. There are people looking for solutions there. And instead of being on the consumer side, I'm looking at, well, where's their need? You know, you got a lot of reason why I started an agency too is that there were a lot of Black churches who were just like, we don't have anybody helping us with nothing related to design and marketing. We're just winging it. And then from there, you evolve and you're learning like there's a lot of need to be met. And I can lean on my race and my cultural background. And it's another thing that I like about even Steve Stout, who's like, you know, he did a lot of work in marketing and he's partially responsible for a lot of reasons why a lot of the celebrities that we know of have gotten into commercials over the last like 20 years. And he was also really close with Jay-Z. And so he connected a lot of hip hop culture to like corporate America and structured a lot of deals because he was able to figure out like there's a void here with getting our culture into the mainstream. Like, and he kind of helped do that as a marketer. So I knew even with my agency that there's a benefit to being Black. There's a benefit to being millennial. You know, these things are privileges of mine that I get to be young in America, Black, like all these things. I'm going to leverage them as my power, you know, versus using it or seeing it as a weakness. It becomes a benefit for me. And instead of looking at it from a standpoint of what I'm being kept away from or what somebody else is doing to hinder me, I'm choosing to identify where there's missed opportunity, you know, to be brilliant and excellent and spending more time on that side of truly developing and building solutions. And the more I've spent my life in that space, the more confident I've become. And the more I see, the more opportunities that I do see. Like, I'm excited about the next 10, 20, 30 years, even in the midst of the crazy chaos of what we're experiencing, because I believe there are brilliant young Black men and women stepping out on the scene who are taking ownership and taking their power back to develop and create new solutions. And that excites me to be a part of this era and opening up those kind of doors. I do see that as part of my privilege, as part of my responsibility to not necessarily just stay on the side of pointing the finger where it needs to be pointed. You know, this is very true. There's some things that need to be pointed out that are totally structurally set up against us to keep us from advancing. But in the spaces where we can occupy territory and advance, we had better be running. You know, so that's kind of where my mindset is at.
Yes, you can't see me right now, but I'm like nodding my head like the church. Yes, amen. Because you were preaching for a moment there. Like you really are. And even just like you said, the privilege of being a millennial, right? Like being a Black youth at this time is way different than it was, 40 years ago. So, and we have all this technology at our disposal and we have so many opportunities that our ancestors did not have. And another thing that she said, like you just came out the gate with so many keywords in that first answer. Passive income. So you talked a bit about passive income, and I know that goes into that whole idea of multiple streams of income. So we know how important it is to have that, but sometimes it seems like a lot to tackle. So can you talk a little bit about having multiple streams of income, passive income, and how you just go about establishing that for people who are trying to get off the ground?
Yeah, so I definitely believe in the importance of building wealth, and I also understand that there's a short time frame that my physical body can run this race and get
Mm,
out here and collect these dollars and store them. There's only so much I can do in a
mm-hmm,
day over a lifetime. And as I've learned more about the importance of building wealth, I've actually, um, there's this whole movement going around called the FIRE movement. I don't know if you heard about that. This whole like financial independence, retire early.
yes, yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah, well, all these millennials are now like really taking over their financial lifestyles and building out a blueprint and a plan to accelerate retirement where they can really free themselves up sooner rather than waiting until they're in their 60s, getting to it in their
Mm-hmm,
40s and 50s, and sometimes in their 30s by following a certain type of lifestyle in terms of how they manage their money and save and invest. So for me, I know that there's only a certain amount of vehicles I can get into, to
mm-hmm,
build wealth. One is working a job, which is a way to build wealth. With your 401k savings and investment. But I wanted to do it from a standpoint of business because I saw so many other people who would create these different revenue streams. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, let me first start by figuring out how to take my design skills and turn this into a true profession of mine, taking this talent and
mm-hmm.
skill of mine and turn it into a profession, professionalizing my art is the way I would call it, is how I used to say it, professionalizing your art. And finding a way to systematize it so I can get a level of clientele in. And once that started churning, it was then like, how do we scale this business model? How do we scale this? And that's just one revenue stream. How do I grow it? But then looking in that, what are these other opportunities to have spin-off streams? And that's why I did the web services because it was right in sync with the first revenue stream. So even I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes people don't even realize like you can have a skill set in one thing. Like, okay, for example, my nephew, he's a fitness trainer, and he lives out in Las Vegas. He has a revenue stream where he just trains people. Like he has clients that come in, he's
Mm-hmm.
training them with fitness. But he recently just launched his own like apparel line where he has his own like he got shirts and the sports pants and the sports bag and all this kind of stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
opened up another stream, but it's within the same brand, but it's another stream.
Yes.
And so looking at ways to create different streams. That's one thing. And then how do we turn these streams into scenarios where it can work for you passively, where you don't have to work for it? So for me, like
Mm-hmm.
the web services business is passive income because it's built on a subscription model where the customer pays a
Yes.
monthly fee or a yearly fee. So even looking at that, like how do we set up these things that we can automate, where the revenue can become passive? Real estate is another channel where that's an old school passive income process, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
even looking at how to innovate in that. Like, what are the gaps in real estate right now? You got a lot of old school landlords who do real estate the old school way. How
Mm.
do I innovate and provide a better experience, better marketing? I'm studying co-living. How do you turn one property instead of renting out the whole property, rent it out by the rooms, and you can go on a
Mm-hmm.
higher return, a higher margin? So I've been studying like these different streams that I'm trying to create, how do I scale them and how do I set them up to where they can create passive income so that money can then be stored for wealth purposes, and eventually for freedom
Mm-hmm.
purposes where I don't necessarily have to work for any of the businesses I'm in. I want to eventually step back from even operating and having to bring other people on to sort of operate the businesses. And I just kind of stay in
Mm-hmm.
as a managing partner, which is why managing partner is the title I went with. At the time. So it is a big deal for me because I don't think revenue streams and passive income is a conversation that happens in a lot of households that I've been in. Like it's just not something we talk about
Yeah.
because most people are just trying to work their job. And it's like you can literally work your job and have a side hustle that you start on the side, and
Yes.
set that up and figure out how that could be a way you can create passive income, or you can dive into real estate. And then last thing I say is, of course you have things like stocks and bonds. So I invest in the stock market. I actually own cryptocurrency and Bitcoins. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm investing in that stuff I bought Bitcoins back in 2013, I think.
I was
At
going
a
to
time.
ask you, when did you buy it? Because I know some people bought it early on and like didn't think it would take off and got rid of it, and now they regret
Yeah,
it.
so I bought mine in 2013. Like this was November 2013 when it was like $400, and I bought a few then and just sat on it. And I'm gonna sit on it for another 5 to 10 years. I don't have a need for it, but just
Hmm.
even in that regard, like diving into, I don't necessarily do a lot of like get rich quick schemes. I don't necessarily believe in that kind of stuff, but just studying
Hmm.
like where trends going, where the market's going, and putting a few dollars in to test something out, So, even investing in those kind of things, I know down the road, a few of them will hit bigger than others, but that will allow me to create a level of wealth where I can step back from the 9 to 5 world and really dive into like what is the greater work I want to do, where I don't have to be focused
Hmm.
on covering the bills. Like I don't want to be spending my hours on bill payments, and just trying to
Hmm.
survive in expense mode, because that to me the freedom of time is the ultimate, one of the ultimate types of
Yes.
wealth. And when you get your time back,
Hmm.
now you can really focus on how you want to really add value and enjoy life, if that's also a thing. Some people just want to travel. I want to
Right.
contribute to the Black community in a lot of cool
Yes.
ways, so I want to get myself free so that I can help other people get free. And then I want to go to Africa and invest in Africa. That's
Hmm.
that's the long, 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 long dream. But yeah.
Okay, so you just like flow so smoothly through this, like you were just raised this way. Did you just
Mm,
grow up in a household like this, or how did you become like about this entrepreneur mentality? Like you said earlier, so many of us don't have that influence growing up. We don't
yeah.
know about that. Like, how did you get into that?
Wow. Wow. So that's interesting. So I didn't grow up in that kind of household. Matter of fact, it was kind of the opposite. My family, we're heavily built on principles of family, love, respect, dignity. We're Christian family,
Mm-hmm.
really tight knit family. I love my family. Um, but those, like when it comes to like finance and wealth, assets and passive income, multiple streams, owning businesses, ownership, land, like those topics weren't at the dinner table, because really my
Mm.
family isn't necessarily entrepreneurial like that. So I specifically, and this was started off at high school, I specifically, I made an executive decision in my mind to pursue things that my family did not pursue, because I wanted to, one, add that value back to my family. So I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
nobody's going to. We keep flipping the channel. We keep going past this one channel where this stuff is running across the screen at the bottom. Nobody
Mm.
stops and look at that channel, CNBC, and I'm like, what is this? I literally one day I remember sitting in the house. I went to the channel and I sat there and I'm like, what in the hell is this going on? I didn't know nothing about stocks. I made myself learn. And as I started to get more educated and aware about it, I literally just started opening up myself to more, influencers and leaders in business and in just wealth and finance. I'm reading books from
Mm-hmm.
Jim Cramer. I got hooked on Dave Ramsey. I was following Dave Ramsey's financial peace thing through college, like his whole baby step stuff. So I just started like diving in heavily, because at the center of this for me, I grew up in a family that didn't have ownership like that. Like my grandparents owned their
Mm-hmm.
house. Other than that, nobody really was owning real estate. Nobody was owning businesses.
Mm-hmm.
There was no sense of ownership. And then two, I saw how folks had to get up every day and work hard, for their money
Mm-hmm.
and their check. And it'd be difficult for them to really enjoy life. Like, you could travel maybe once or twice a year, if that. I have family members who've
Yeah.
never been on a plane. So like
Mm-hmm.
just seeing how much money limited experience and exposure to things. And it was
Mm.
always this like constant hurdle to get over. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I will run fast, get the information and come back. So
Mm.
on a side note, literally right now, I started this thing in my family called a family business mastermind. I think every family needs a mastermind. Like we
Mm.
should have, even if everybody's not in it, start it with a couple of people in the family and set a day and just start the conversations, even if it's around a book. Like, hey guys, we're going to focus on this. So right now it's about 4 of us in our family business mastermind. We're all in business. Some just started their businesses, and we're all focusing on financial freedom. That's the center goal. And then we're learning
Mm-hmm.
about all these different things around what to do with your 401k, Roth IRAs, how to set up your savings, how to automate your savings, what's your savings rate needs to be so that you're getting on
Mm-hmm.
track to actually saving and investing right. Like we're talking about how to pay off debt fast using Dave Ramsey's model. Like we're diving into all these things, budgeting and all this kind of stuff, because I know it wasn't there prior to this. Like that just wasn't how we grew up. So I see an importance of, at a family level, you almost have to create an environment where that can be had so that the children will grow up around that being a thing. And it's like, okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about these things and now we know I'm not just in college spending all my money with credit cards because I grew up
Mm-hmm.
learning, but a lot of families
Right.
didn't have that. So I had to kind of play catch up and get my own like master's in finance, if you will, just reading and
Yes.
studying and reading and like, I'm going to figure this out because it's not going to be this curse over my family and other families. And the last
Mm-hmm.
thing I say too is why it's part of the reason why I started Spendify, my former business partner. One reason why I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to create Spendify because I wanted to get at the heartbeat of the power of the dollar and what your dollar can do.
Mm.
You are conscious and awakened to your dollar, where it goes, how
Mm.
you spend it, how you invest it, how you save it, how you leverage it to affect change in your community. Your dollar has power in the political room. How do we even use our
Mm-hmm.
dollar for our own politics? Stuff we never talk about. Like instead of
Yes.
just voting for people, we're actually putting a dollar in to help endorse the campaign so that when they
Yes.
run, we're behind it from the jump. Like, how do we create
Mm-hmm.
a voter pack? And that's something Diddy is doing with the whole Our Black Party, this whole voter pack thing that we've never had. So I'm thinking like, I want to
Mm-hmm.
build a whole platform that could literally uplift the conscience of the dollar for our people, help move green dollars into black hands. So I care
Mm-hmm.
about this economic agenda heavily. I don't know if you ever heard of Dr. Claude Anderson, but he's a
Mm-hmm.
prolific scholar when it comes to studying economics and tracing economics throughout slavery all the way to now. Like he's an older guy. He wrote a
Mm.
book called Powernomics. That's a really good book. Everybody should get it, read it. And he breaks down these 5
Yes.
pillars that we have to climb to literally create economic fortitude as a people. And so that's what I'm on for myself, for my family, for my people, across the entire global Black diaspora. That's what I want to see happen. And if I could play any role in that, that would be my gift to the world. I can get in the casket and go on to heaven.
Yeah, that is so important, and I'm glad to see that there is more of a movement towards that is
Mm-hmm.
becoming more popular. I think there's always been like a group that's always worked towards that, but now we're starting to see it trend and become big, and
Yeah.
people are really starting to think of ways that they can support Black businesses and shop with Black businesses. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's really important. As far as like ownership and real estate. So I know earlier you talked about, co-living spaces and shared spaces. And I know as of late, there's been a lot of discussion about if owning a home is still a wise decision. Like how do you determine if you should focus on owning a home versus like maybe opening a storefront if you're a business owner? Some people have suggested different forms of house hacking, like you kind of said, a more modern approach to real estate to save
Mm-hmm.
money. So what are your thoughts on home ownership and home ownership in relation to like being a business owner and house hacking and other ways that people are trying to go about making sure that they're making an investment when they're owning property?
Yeah, I think I literally was messaging a friend of mine about this in Instagram. We were messaging literally, I think 2 nights ago about this. Um, I I'm not necessarily against like owning your own house that you live in. I do know there's studies that show that for families that own their home, they are more likely to build wealth because their house literally becomes like a central part of their wealth over time. And I think at
Mm-hmm.
the general basis, for those who aren't necessarily as entrepreneurial and aren't necessarily going to be building businesses, doing all this stuff, and for those who aren't necessarily interested in investing in real estate and like doing the whole real estate thing like that, I do think it is wise to have assets. And where can you position yourself to create assets and have assets? And one of them is owning a home, and eventually I mean, when you buy a house, it's not an asset; it's a liability. It's a massive debt that the mortgage company really
Yes.
owns, and you're buying that house to yourself month over month over
Mm-hmm.
15 to 30 years. So I get it. I think it is worth that to buy a home for yourself if you aren't planning on going into business or doing real estate investment. But if you are planning on going into business and doing real estate investment, I think it's better to um, actually to rent and
Mm.
use your credit line and your credit to purchase rental property. So, like for example,
Mm-hmm.
I was approved for up to like $250,000 worth of credit to buy a house. What I did instead of buying a house for me, I took that and am purchasing several houses in my hometown. These houses are like $40,000 to $60,000 a house, three
Mm-hmm.
bedroom, 3 bedroom, one bath. So instead of me tying up that that margin of debt for me to just live in a house and be paying back a loan myself, I use
Mm-hmm.
that to purchase rental properties and then create income. And this is based on, if you read the Robert Kiyosaki books like Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Yeah. Yeah.
he has another really good book called Cash Flow Quadrant, where he talks about
Mm-hmm.
like positioning your mindset around what are you going to do with your money, how you're going to position yourself from employee to investor.
Mm-hmm.
It made sense for me to tie that money up in investments, create new passive income, and then scale. I can
Mm-hmm.
always buy a house, and what my thought is, I can buy a house later and really get something I really like, and my passive income
Mm-hmm.
pays that mortgage that I live in,
Exactly. Yeah.
versus me trying to tie up my credit line and whatever, and my income to pay for a house. And then of course you have all these things that happen when you own property. You got to take care of it. I know
Mm-hmm.
people who've gone upside down on that house.
Yeah.
So I think it's smarter, if you feel like you have that entrepreneurial tick or that investor tick, to use that credit and that time to build that. I'm not necessarily all for taking out a line of credit to start a business, but I do
Mm-hmm.
know if you test it, if you like I would test it on a shoestring budget, test the business model on a shoestring budget until you can
Mm-hmm.
get a viable amount of customers where it makes sense to, like, okay, now I need to get a loan because I want to scale, or I need to set this thing up properly. Like, and I say this too, when I first started my first business, I didn't have an LLC. I didn't have a business
Mm-hmm.
plan. I just knew some folk that needed some logos and flyers. And I was just like, let me first satisfy this need and learn. So I just started creating me a little business card. People don't realize how easy it is to start a lot of
Mm-hmm.
service-based businesses. People try to get into things sometimes with so much money up front, but a lot of times it's not even necessarily as difficult for most service-based business to get started, or
Right.
even get a list of you can get a list of customers and not have nothing together. Like people who are like, I'm willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pay. Customers will pay up front just to secure, their
Mm-hmm.
purchase or their order or whatever. I think lean in that regard, and then maybe getting a line of credit or business loan if you need that to finance the scaling of the business. But that's what I would say. So I'm waiting to buy my house later, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not a need right now for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole of house hacking lately. So I
Hmm.
think it's just a smart way to invest into a house, because I'll admit for a while I was on that like anti buy a house strain. I was like, that is not a good decision, you know.
Mm,
It's like that. I don't think that's going to be a good strategy, because it's just not immediate enough of an investment for me. So I was
mm,
just like, and, I have, as you said earlier, I got to run fast. I have things to do. I don't need to be like 70 just now owning my house. Like,
mm.
I, so yeah, I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that professionally. So speaking on business owners and, just like you said, some of these things people assume about starting a business that aren't necessarily true. Can you talk a little bit about what the business essentials are that you think are most often overlooked in the Black community, and what strategies do you suggest to address those?
Yeah, let me think. One thing I think, just bringing it back up, is um, One thing I think that's missed is we tend to glorify the aesthetics of business and
Mm.
how it looks from what we see other people doing. And so we think that we need these amazing looking, websites and branding and all this stuff. So just many people spend money on things that aren't essential to
Mm-hmm.
starting, a business. And at the end of the day, the centerpiece of it is, one, is there demand for something? Do I have a
Mm-hmm.
way to supply that demand? And can I charge for it? And will they pay? And like, if I
Mm-hmm.
can connect that just basic foundation of supply and demand, if I can get somebody to pay for what I can supply based on their need for it, then I'm in business, and you can do that at a very grassroots level, of just testing it out. And I think testing is another essential part.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was telling, like, even with my cousin, he's in our family business mastermind. He actually has two
Mm-hmm.
businesses that he's testing out right now. And with the second one, we were just talking about, like, hey, for the type of services that he's offering, it may appeal more to college students. So you're in Albany State is there. Figure out how to get in front of college students. Now that becomes a thing of whether you're going to use social media, are you going to get on campus, are you going to try
Mm-hmm.
word of mouth? But you don't have to go spend all this money trying to build this big thing versus let me get out in front of these people and see if I can get some level of interest from people, or even potentially people who are willing to pay for this. I
Mm-hmm.
think testing is essential, for that. Another thing I think is missed heavily is, when you don't know something, you don't have to spend so much time in ignorance when there are plenty of people out here who could give you that next insight. And so I want to push back on this whole mentor thing, because everybody's like, you need mentors. To be honest, most folks don't have time to be your mentor, like,
Mm-hmm.
hands on. What I did, instead of trying to have mentors, I looked for people who had the next answer that I needed. Like, I'm trying to figure this
Mm-hmm.
out. I need to throw this up on the wall with somebody. So what I would do, I would reach out to people, folks I didn't know, people I kind of knew, folks, I could ask somebody, hey, do you know anyone? And just, hey man, I need 30 minutes of your time. I have this question. And next thing you know, most people feel comfortable giving away 15 to 30 minutes of their time to talk. And
Yeah.
when people feel like they've helped out, and then like, okay, let me update this person. Man, thank you for your advice. This is what I did. Is it okay if I needed any other advice? Is it okay if I reach back out? And always people say
Mm.
yes. So it ain't necessarily that people, I don't have mentors. I used to feel like that. And then I realized I was
Mm.
looking at it wrong. Like, I don't necessarily
Mm.
need somebody to walk hand to hand with me throughout it all. I just need
Mm-hmm.
that next roadblock, that next, obstacle, a hurdle addressed. And it just depends on who that person is. Like, for example, even in real estate, one of my cousins, he's a doctor, and here in Atlanta, he invests in property. And found out, I didn't even know this. I found this out at the family reunion, and I immediately like, hey, cuz, I get your phone number. If I got any questions, can I call? He's like, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just hit him up with every time I had a question. I could either shoot it to him or hop on a call. I got so far ahead in my real estate journey, not because I
Mm.
read a bunch of books and did a bunch of stuff online, but because I got in close proximity to somebody who was already doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't blow up their phone and try to make them a mentor and pull on hours of their lives. It was just these short conversations that helped me take my next step, ask my next question. And if you can find a mentor that's willing to be very hands-on and involved, that's a blessing. But a lot of times it's hard to
Yes.
find that. And I think people don't lean on that, almost like, I don't even know what you call semi mentor kind of scenario, to like, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to figure it all out by yourself. Um, Another thing I think that is uh, sort of like missed in this business process is, I was talking about the mastermind thing. So this
Mm-hmm.
mastermind concept, I have another mastermind that's me and four other guys. These are like peers of mine, and we're all, businessmen. We're all trying to build wealth, trying to get the financial freedom. Like, we're, five Black brothers just moving forward, and we meet every week. And that has helped me sort of refine and clean up things in my businesses, and have a sense of accountability. Because I think people don't
Mm.
realize how much time they actually are wasting. Like, We
Mm,
thinking we working on our businesses and we might be doing 10 hours of really just scrolling through social media. And
mm,
if you audit a person's day or week, most of us aren't really even maximizing our day. We're not necessarily efficiently living life anyway. And when you look at
mm,
a person trying to start a business, we have no way to assess our time. Like, how do I even know if I'm even spending my time right today? Like, no wonder it
yes.
takes me 17 months to figure out something that could take me 17 hours because I'm lazy in one regard. I got other stuff going on. I'm distracted, and nobody's holding me accountable. And having a
Mm,
mastermind has been essential because I got to check in with these guys every week. And I got to give a report on like, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm doing. And
mm-hmm.
sometimes I go to them for insight, and advice. So those are things that I would say, if I were to look at off the top of my head, which would be things I feel like people miss in trying to start in business or grow in business.
Yeah, I really think the whole mastermind thing is super important in having someone or multiple people to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like you said, when you're siloed as a business owner, you get into your own bubble and then you're like, oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
marketing, and you're browsing social for however long, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, having someone who can hold you accountable um is something that is much needed, especially for any goals, but especially in business. You
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot about Black wealth, and I'm sure you've heard, but lately pop culture has been highlighting Black Wall Street. And we're even starting to see it in shows now, right? Like Lovecraft Country and what is it? The Watchmen, talk as we approach the Black Wall Street 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre. So,
Mm-hmm.
on that, do you think it's possible to rebuild Black Wall Street? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I do think it's possible to build Black Wall Streets. I think what it looks like today is I think there's a digital Black Wall Street that
Hmm.
can be built and sort of is being built um,
Mm-hmm.
in some regard because I feel like people are connecting online in ways, and a lot of folks are running their businesses online. They don't necessarily have a brick and mortar store, and folks are finding ways to partner up and create their own like mastermind or groups or networks. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
part of several like Facebook groups where many businesses are connected and folks share and seeing people shop and amongst each other. So I think there's a digital Black Wall Street. That's kind of what I want to help Spendify become, if you will, like,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of digital version of where people can come and this is where they shop, this is where they get all their stuff from, and folks have a sense of connectivity to the businesses that they spend with, even potentially investing in
Mm-hmm.
those businesses and having some kind of equity in those businesses through crowdfunding. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like physical locations, I definitely think there is great opportunity for redefining Black communities. We are everywhere.
Mm.
And this
Yes.
whole buying back the block thing is extremely exciting to me because I know there's a group of people in Georgia that are. This article was going around. We posted about it on our Spinify blog too. But just there's this group of people. I think it was like 19 families that have gotten together and have bought this land, and they're finna develop this land and create their like a new Black Wall Street, if you will, of
Mm.
residential and commercial properties, and just families who've gotten in and said, "We're gonna commit to this. We're gonna live here." I want to see that model play out. Like I may want to
Mhm.
move there or invest there, buy properties there, and own some property. Like it's possible. I think there just has to be just controlled examples of it being tested, and I feel like that group is doing a good job
Mm.
of it. I feel like I mean, there's some other things that are happening in different communities where people are starting to get more invested in their community, specifically buying their property in these areas, like basically gentrifying our own communities and
Yes.
getting involved in the political infrastructure of our community, how things are set up, how we're governing ourselves, and eventually bringing businesses into those spaces as well. So I think that there's a time coming where we will start seeing these. Maybe there'll be towns at some point, but at least like these neighborhoods where we're living and we are business owners. Whether or not I think the days of it being all brick and mortar, that may not necessarily be the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
These people may be living in these communities, and some may actually have physical locations in that community, but many may
Mm-hmm.
have their businesses online, but they all
Right.
know each other. They all shop. I'm ordering my groceries or my fresh vegetables and whatever from a local farmer's market, but I'm ordering it
Mm-hmm.
online. It's a subscription. It's getting delivered to my house, and everybody in the community does that. Like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna start seeing things like that. This is where I get my makeup from. This is where I get my vitamins from. This is where I get my deodorant from. And these are,
Mm.
companies that are in the same community, or they're connected through an online network. And I think the future version of Black Wall Street is gonna be more distributed and harder to destroy.
Mm.
You can knock down bricks and wood, but you can't necessarily knock down a vibration. We all on that same
Yes.
wavelength. You can't untether that. So I think we're starting to step into that in a way that is exciting to me. And I think this, we fast forward some years from now, I think we will find ourselves stepping across the ocean and connecting to our African brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, and
Mm.
finding out how to connect with them, not just on a consumer level, but on full distribution level. Like, there are Black manufacturers around the world that we
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily connect with. You can literally be involved in an entire vertical in an industry that can be all Black. Where you get your actual raw materials and raw goods from can be from the hands of Black people, but we're not
Mm.
connected across the borders like that. And I think that's another opportunity that technology will help to inform in the years to come.
Now that is so important. I had another guest on the show earlier and we talked about Black Wall Street. And one thing that we did talk about is how difficult it is to like have a business that is like completely Black from point A to point B. Like you said, your
Mm-hmm.
distributor may not be a Black owned business, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, but if we get to the point where we're connecting globally and technology
Yeah.
has empowered us to do that, and technology definitely makes us infallible compared to what we were facing 100 years ago, being brick and mortar.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
One thing that you said several times is like testing a business idea, testing like this Black Wall Street model for the community with the 19 families. Can you talk a little bit about what does testing in business look like?
I think when I say testing, I'm thinking about it from like in the startup world. You have this whole like concept. I mean, it's been around, this whole concept of like the lean startup. And
Yeah.
there's a book written on it. There's like, it's like a
Yes.
philosophy
Mm-hmm.
behind it. And that approach of getting to like an MVP, like a minimal viable product,
Mm-hmm.
getting to a state where you have something in hand or something packaged together that you can actually offer. And for some people, it may just be, hey, I'm a hairstylist. I know how to do hair. I already have the skill. So I'm already ready. Like, I am the minimal viable product. I need to
Mm-hmm.
then maybe iron out, my pricing and how I'm going to deliver the service. And then from there, let me go out and try to get a customer. And I think that kind of approach to testing is capable across the board. I know it started in the whole tech world, but you can do that regardless of whatever business you're in. Like, what's your minimal viable product? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are the key things that you can get at the simplest level to get out in front of a customer and present, you know. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
at a point where you can actually present and actually transact with that presentation, actually do that transaction. And it can be, something as simple as, I'm gonna put up spin up a quick visual of a T-shirt that I'm gonna make. I don't even have the store set up. I'm just gonna spin up a
Mm-hmm.
shirt, put it out there, and do pre-orders. Pre-orders is a
Mm-hmm.
great way for product-based businesses to just test. Can you get some
Mm-hmm.
pre-orders in? That is ultimately what Kickstarter is about. Kickstarter is, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is, we raising money on pre-orders. Like, we
Right.
don't even have it together yet, and we raising all this money on that. It's basically being your own like micro Kickstarter by
Mm-hmm.
going about it in a very lean way where you can test the market. And testing is ultimately trying to find that repeatable and scalable business model. That's ultimately what
Mm-hmm.
lean startup is. That's their definition of a startup. is your
Mm-hmm.
pursuit to find a repeatable and scalable business model. Can I do this same transaction again and again and again? And if I can, how can I scale it? And then ultimately, you're really in business and operating, but making your business efficient over time, that's where you're like doing the harder work of setting up the operations and the LLCs and all those other
Mm-hmm.
components that really helps to professionalize the business and make it stand out. But on day one, you don't have to do all that professionalizing on day one. It's more of just, I need to get out here with an MVP that I can test and see, can I get some kind of feedback from the customer or transaction from the customer? And let me repeat
Mm-hmm.
that and do that enough times where it validates that I'm ready to move forward. And you can decide what that test looks like. You can say, I want to run a test for a month, for, a week, for
Mm-hmm.
90 days, however long you want to set your test, and whatever the, I guess, end goal objective is at the end. I need to get 10 paying customers before I can say this thing is actually working, or I need to get,
Mm-hmm.
100 people to respond to this thing and give me feedback, or whatever it is, whatever you want to be your test, you can define it. But though literally testing in startup world is part of the reason why some of the companies we know and love still exist, because they literally are
Mm-hmm.
in test mode all the time. They're throwing things at us, trying to get a feel of
Yes.
beta testing, just beta testing it out, seeing how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Spendify, our site now is still in beta test. You go to spendify.com, it says
Mm-hmm.
Spendify beta. It's still in test mode. We're still trying to understand, before we throw all this money and all this other stuff into it later on, because I'm planning to build out application and all this other stuff with our developers. So we've been in test mode for
Mm-hmm.
years. And I think testing should be way more sexier than it is in business. Like, if you become an amazing tester, you could spit up all kinds of business ventures. You just testing.
Yeah.
Let me test and see. Let me test. Man, this thing made me $100,000 in a month. This is the way to go. Like,
Yeah.
I'm testing. Like, become a tester first before trying to be this CEO, businessman, woman, boss. All these words that make us feel good. Like, become an excellent tester.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Tester needs to become a sexier word that needs to be on shirts. Tester instead of just like
Yeah,
boss.
you're right.
So you've mentioned a lot of books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and most recently Lean Startup. What's your current read, a recommended read, or a most recent read?
Ooh, my current read right now is Atomic Habits. Let me
Heard of
see.
that one.
Yeah, this book is really, really, really good. I have it on Audible, and I'm still trying to get through it. But he just kind of he breaks
Mm-hmm.
down on how to properly develop the right type of habits and how to become like efficient in developing and creating good habits, and how
Mm-hmm.
those habits inform really the outcomes of your life. And he basically kind of defines how a lot of where we are and what we're doing is based on these habits we've created, based on the environment we've come from. So that's a really good book, that I'm going through, and will try to fold it into my personal life and professional life. Um, a book that uh, I haven't started on it yet, that I'm gonna be reading next, is this book by Chris Hogan, called Everyday Millionaire. He's on Dave
Mm.
Ramsey's team, and they have officially done the biggest study of millionaires in the United States, and
Wow.
they wrote an entire book on it. He even has the actual study that they did, that they conducted, the research that they conducted, in a separate book. And I bought both of them, and I'm gonna read that. And it's similar to it's similar from the book years ago, Millionaire Next Door, because that was a big
I
book.
love that one.
Yeah, it's sort of like a modern day version of that, with
Mm.
newer stats and all that kind of stuff based on present 21st century, whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what was the other one? What was the other question? What was that?
I was just saying either one, but you've already dropped so many books. Current read, recommended, or most recent?
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I would, yeah, I think that's what I would say. As far as recommended read though, I would recommend uh, that people pick up. If you're a person of color, you should pick up Powernomics, because I think people need
Mm.
to know, because everybody's like, "What's the black agenda? How do we fix this?" Everybody just He's trying
Yeah.
to figure it out, and Dr. Claude has kind of put it together, and it's been out, and folks need to like dive in. So I would say Powernomics, and for just the person who's trying to develop that entrepreneurial mindset, and maybe you working a job, you're trying to transition out, you just want to really work on that mindset. I would recommend both, either or of Robert Kiyosaki's book, the Rich Dad Poor Dad one, which is a
Mm-hmm.
classic, and the Cash Flow Quadrant one, which is
Mm-hmm.
really good on just understanding the different mindsets of business.
Yeah, and Rich Dad Poor Dad, you can actually find that one free on YouTube, y'all. So check that out. I will leave the link in the show notes because I bought the physical copy, lost it, and wanted to do another read. So I found it on YouTube for free. Just saying. I know we should support, creative work and whatever, but it's out there. It's free. All right. So as we get ready to wrap up, I know you already spoke on this a lot, but how do you think, in summary, your work overall impacts the Black community?
I think my work is in service to everything that I've created is because I'm trying to almost as best I can get underneath. Like, I want to get underneath the feet of Black business owners and entrepreneurs and leaders and Black, brilliance, and be a better step up. Whether it's building your brand, your website, helping you with strategy, or helping you figure out your finances. I've met with so many of my peers to just sit down and talk about their money and investments and what are they doing. Like, any step of the way that I can be of service to, like, I want to help be a part of the ocean tide that lifts up all Black ships. That's what I care about. That's what Simplify is about. That's part of the reason why I'm in real estate. Of course, I want to make money and build wealth, but everything I'm doing is in service too. I specifically went back to my hometown and bought property on the same side of town both of my grandparents' houses are. On the south side. I wanted to invest back into my hometown. I wanted to provide housing to Albany State students. I wanted to get back in my city and eventually get involved in politics in my city to figure out how I can help connect dots and add more value. So everything that I'm doing is sort of like, I want to help create Wakanda for real. Like, as
Yes.
many Wakandas as possible. I saw Black
Yes.
Panther and my life changed because I saw what we could look like had we not been touched by our oppressors, what we could have been. And part of me wants to manifest that. Like, I don't care what we've been through. I want to live in a vibration untainted, like, and untamed. I want to manifest that brilliant Africa that we truly are representatives of, and that excites me. So my end goal is that, I would love to say that whatever I've built has advanced and helped Black businesses go further faster, has helped to put green dollars into Black hands, and has helped to connect Black economics across the entire global Black diaspora. Like that, those three things would serve my soul, as a Black man in society.
Yes. Yes. You just spoke so much power, and Black Panther is such an important film for us. Rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. What a beautiful spirit to leave us so early.
Yeah.
And now, lastly, before we get to how to keep up with you, what final advice do you have for aspiring Black professionals who are looking to be serial entrepreneurs?
Ooh, I would say, man, there's so much, but I would narrow it down and say, I think the three M's. I actually wrote this down. I was gonna do like a whole talk on this, but I still am one day with these three M's, which is
Yeah, we need that.
mindset. Yeah, I am. Mindset, mentor, and mastermind. Um, Diving in those three things, and the first thing is developing and cultivating your mindset. So, some of the books that I named, like, what are you reading? What are you listening to? Whether it's in the car or in the house, how are you massaging and lotioning this into your mind around building yourself as a businessman, businesswoman. What are you studying? What are you looking at? What YouTube videos are you watching? What YouTube channels do you subscribe to? What podcasts are you subscribing to? Because you have to surround your mind. You got to treat your mind as an environment. You got to feed that environment. You got to place things in that environment that can occupy your mind so that you can be learning and developing on a regular basis. Second thing is, who are your mentors? Or as I would say, like, semi-mentors. Who are the people that you can get in reach of or connect to that you may or may not know, or you can find through word of mouth or somebody that you may know of, that you can get access to them to throw those most immediate hurdles and questions in front of. Who are those people, and getting in front of those people over a call, over a Zoom, to get those questions answered, because you don't have to spin wheels all day if there are people around you who can provide insight. Maybe they can't mentor you, but they can semi-mentor. They can give you 15 minutes of their time every now and then, or you throw a text message to them and they just give you the answer in a text or email. Get comfortable with that type of people around you. You need people around your mindset. And around your mentors, you need a mastermind. Who do you know, whether it's one friend or one person, maybe they're not physically in your city or where you are, maybe somebody online you plug into. My mastermind, we're spread out between Atlanta and Tallahassee, and we don't meet physically.
Oh, wow.
We meet virtually on video on Google Meet every Monday night. And so you don't even have to physically be in the same place. It's COVID, so I understand it's hard to do anyway. So get a mastermind together with one or two people, 3 or 4 people, that are all committed to moving forward together, and just start meeting weekly and talking about it. You can research how to start a mastermind and how to structure it. You can figure that out on your own, but just start that process of having these conversations, talking about your mentors and your mindset with your mastermind. And if you can set that infrastructure up around you, a year from now, you're going to be way further than what you thought you would be if you just did it on your own. Like, it matters. I would say mindset, mentor, and mastermind would be my advice.
Yes, those 3 M's. And I would definitely have those documented and noted in the show notes, because I know people are like, man, I can't write that right now. But I got you. All right. So how can people find you to keep pace with your entrepreneurial journey online?
Yeah, so you can find me personally. I'm Antwon Davis. So I'm Antwon Davis on everything. All social networks is ANTWON DAVIS. So you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatnot. You can also go to my personal website at antwondavis.com. And from there, you can see all of the businesses that I own. I have all of my business ventures, all kind of case study out on my personal website. So antwondavis.com. And then if you want to reach me directly, you can shoot me an email at antwondavis01@gmail.com. That's antwondavis01@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time. I feel like this whole episode could turn into a series, because you just covered so much important information. That may be a note. You may need to go back in and re-listen to this and make a whole series, make a course, sell it, passive income.
Yeah, you might be right.
Really, really, somebody will definitely pay for your expertise and to get to where you are. And I know that somebody's listening to this right now, and they will be reaching out, because you need people who have this knowledge, people who are about the same business and have the same mentality of building our community.
Yeah, you're right. So right.
Yeah, but thanks for agreeing to be on the show.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I definitely appreciate this. You have no idea how much it meant. I know we, met on social media, but I'm glad that you're doing this. I think this is important. I think the conversation is important. I think the questions were great, so I definitely will be referring other people to come on as well.
I am so grateful that I was able to have that conversation with Antwon. I've been sitting on that interview for a while, and that's because I wanted to save that to close out the interview season of Blackxecutive, because Antwon literally gave us an entire course in a 1-hour episode I would definitely advise you to go back and listen to this episode again, take notes, visit blackxecutive.com, dig into the show notes. The transcript will be up as well so that you can check that out. Make sure that you spend some time with what this man has said, because he spoke so many powerful words. So as usual, and for the final time this season, I'm going to hit you with 5 key takeaways. Number 1, assess the market and need find. Test out business ideas on the market on a small scale before investing too much into a business idea. Antwon spoke about assessing the basics of supply and demand. Is there a demand for something? Do I have a way to supply that demand? Can I charge for it? Will people pay me? Just that simple. And you would be surprised how often people don't ask those questions before they start investing hundreds, thousands of dollars into these businesses. Number 2, embrace your American privilege and take advantage of Black privilege in markets where our representation is minimal, or in sectors that are largely not dominated by majority culture because they're not in our community. They don't know we need these services. Take advantage of that. That is the perfect and prime space for Black business owners to come in and serve Black communities and circulate the Black dollar. Number 3, maximize your input and output while you're in your prime of wealth building. Truth of the matter is, a lot of us are not going to be young spring chickens forever. I do know my demographic for this show, and we're looking at a lot of millennials. So even if you're just outside of the millennials, still know that if you're listening to this, you're probably in your prime of your wealth building. Take advantage of it. Run until you cannot run anymore. Number 4, stop looking for mentors and look for someone who can help you address your next roadblock. That was a really interesting point that Antwon made. And I love that he talked about how important it is to get close in proximity to someone who's already been doing what you're doing and figure out how they can help you get to the next step or answer your next question. And that's a practical approach, almost like a modern day short-term apprenticeship approach without the money, but they're giving you knowledge, which is just as valuable. So that's a great gem to take away from this. If nothing else, if you don't have time to work with a mentor, or if a mentor doesn't have time to work with you, definitely take advantage of that. And number 5, there are several ways to build wealth. We've talked about that already. I think if you're listening to this episode, to this podcast, you know there are several ways to build wealth. If not, literally listen to each episode and you can hear how each of these entrepreneurs and corporate professionals have learned how to build wealth, both in their career and in their businesses. Antwon spoke about the 3 primary ways of working a job, building a business, or investing. Regardless of which path you choose, remember, one of the most important things that he mentioned, the freedom of time, is invaluable. Of those 3 options, how can you maximize your time? We know working a job, trading, physical labor, mental labor for an hourly or if your salary, monetary wage, versus building a business that you operate on your own time or for a short amount of time throughout the week, or just in time intervals that work for you. And then also investing and having other sources of income passively coming in that you don't have to actively trade labor to get. That's it. Those are my 5 key takeaways for this episode. Please, please, please leave me a review. It is the holiday season. If you have listened to any episode of this podcast, especially if you listen to several, come on now, we're fam, y'all. So go ahead and go to Apple Podcasts, leave your girl a review. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. You can always email me at jazz@blackxecutive.com, and I'll be more than happy to respond, reach out to you. So leave a review. And lastly, this will be the final interview episode of Blackxecutive for season 1. Next week, I will have my final episode of the entire season, and it will be a bit of a recap in combination with some information on what to expect in season 2 when we return in January. So make sure you stay tuned and tune in one more time before we're out for the holiday season. You go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, follow me on social media platforms, and share it with a friend, and leave your girl a review. That's my Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Better floats your boat. I just love the season. It's been real, y'all. Until next time, keep aspiring to inspire. Thanks for listening to another episode of Blackxecutive. If you enjoyed listening in on this convo, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you found us. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Blackxecutive. Have something to add to the conversation? Visit blackxecutive.com to leave feedback, and your thoughts could be featured on a later episode. While you're there, pick up your exclusive Blackxecutive gear and rep the culture. And spread the knowledge. If you know a Black creative trying to go pro, a corporate mogul looking to advance, or a cousin that's always hustling but never gets an idea going, drop them a link to the show. Until next time, keep aspiring to inspire.